Today, if you saw somebody chained to a post, you would do something about it. But in the days of the transatlantic slave trade, it was a normal sight to see. It isn't as clear today of what modern slavery looks like, but by knowing the signs of human trafficking, you can help protect yourself and you can help protect others. Traffickers would often brand their victims with tattoos, using words such as daddy or cash. Trafficking victims may show sudden changes of dress and behavior. They may suddenly have possessions that they usually can't afford. They may have unusually long work hours. Victims may have new relationships with boyfriends or girlfriends that are noticeably older, and I'm not talking about a few years. Difficulty with making eye contact, especially with men. Victims may have untreated medical problems, such as cuts, bruises, burns, broken bones. They may miss school frequently, make frequent trips. Victims may be unable to speak independently. Other people may insist on answering questions for them, or even translating for them. Victims may even be frightened of authorities, seeing them as the bad guys. To request help or report possible human trafficking incidents, please call the National Human Trafficking Hotline, 1-888-3737-888, or text info or help at BeFree-233-733.
Thank you. Good evening, those of you who are with us tonight. My name is Jennifer St. Prue, and I am a member of Beta Psi Sigma Alumni Chapter of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated and a member of the Social Action Committee. Tonight, we present part 2 of our human trafficking series, Know the Signs, a community conversation. Both myself and Sora Denise James will be your co-facilitators. Sora Denise James, if you could briefly introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again. I am Sora Denise James. I'm a member of Beta Psi Sigma Alumni Chapter and a member of the Social Actions Committee. At this time, I would like to introduce you to our Madam Basilisk, Adrienne Martien.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Adrienne Martien. I am the Basilisk of the Beta Psi Sigma chapter of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated. I would like to just thank our Social Action Committee for their vision, their leadership in putting this event together. This is the 3rd installment of our Human Trafficking Awareness Month events and activities. So I'm grateful to each SOR on this committee who was able to be a steward to this very important and poignant programming, and also in just bringing awareness, spreading it, doing these live events, and also streaming it on our social media. That way we can spread awareness. Thank you to everyone on this committee. Thank you to our guests and those who will be watching the live stream and recording later. So I'll pass it back over to you, Denise and Jennifer. Thank you.
And now we'll hear from Sasha Bent, who is the chair of our Social Action Committee.
Good evening, Madam Basilisk. Good evening, members of Beta Psi Sigma. Good evening to our sponsors and our panelists and to our guests. Sigma Gamma Rho Incorporated has a rich history of women who have led the way as catalysts for change in communities by addressing issues that perpetuate social inequalities. For us, social action represents the opportunity to implement initiatives and programs that address conditions that plague our communities. Globally, there are estimated 27 million children and adult victims of human trafficking worldwide. Nearly 80% of human trafficking is for sex. Victims of human trafficking are subjected to force, fraud, coercion for the purpose of sexual exploitation or forced labor. Each year, victims of sex trafficking die from abuse, disease, torture, and neglect. Our objective here tonight is to educate members and the public in an effort to spot possible victims, speak up against injustices, and aid our legislators in creating or enhancing laws to fight against human trafficking. Tonight, these are some of our norms and Zoom etiquette. This content may include explicit and triggering material. Viewer discretion is advised. The intention is not to offend, but to provide information. Proceed only if you are comfortable with potentially sensitive topics. We also advise that you turn off your camera and take breaks as needed. In addition, we kindly ask that you assume an open learning stance throughout the conversation. Uphold a collaborative spirit, assume the best, mute your mics, and lastly, monitor airtime to allow for equity of voice. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sasha. So, as I mentioned earlier when we first started, this is a community conversation, and we have two spectacular panelists with us who will be answering some of our questions regarding human trafficking. I first want to introduce Sue Lingenfelter. Sue Lingenfelter retired after 30 years from the New York Blood Center. Her role as business development manager involved outreach to new donor groups, maximizing results in existing donor groups, and developing and training her team members. She's the mother of 3 grown children and the proud grandmother of 8 beautiful grandchildren who are the light of her life. Sue found out about Love 146 and its passion to end child sex trafficking in 2007 from a friend. She became actively involved in the Long Island Task Force, which culminated in a partner's trip to Cambodia and Thailand in October of 2007. It was there that she saw firsthand what Love 146 is doing to change the lives of these precious children. It was a life-altering trip. Several years ago, after becoming aware of the increase in human trafficking on Long Island, her group transitioned from the Love 146 Task Force and formed a not-for-profit called Long Island Against Trafficking, LIAT. As the secretary of the board of LIAT, she is passionately committed to raising awareness about this horrific practice of human trafficking with the goal of raising funds to support local agencies who are providing services to those that are rescued, as well as motivating others to be part of the solution. She routinely speaks to groups that are interested in joining LIAT's team. It has been her pleasure to work with motivated, caring, and committed people who want to make a difference. Sue, thank you so much for joining us today, and we welcome your answers and thoughts regarding human trafficking. Denise?
I have the honor of introducing Laura Mullen. She is the co-founder and president of the Human Trafficking Survivor Advisory Board for the Empowerment Collaborative at Long Island. Laura is a survivor of human trafficking. She is the co-founder and the president of Human Trafficking Survivor Advisory Board for the Empowerment Collaborative of Long Island, ECLI/FIBES, which is the first human trafficking survivor advisory board on Long Island. Laura actively participates in curriculum writing and program development for anti-human trafficking training. As a community engagement leader, she frequently attends speaking events for the Suffolk County Anti-Trafficking Initiative to educate and raise awareness about human trafficking. Laura is a survivor leader and dedicated anti-trafficking service advocate who gives direct support to victims of trafficking by lobbying for legislative bills and successfully campaigning for the START Act, which was passed in 2021. Laura is also the project coordinator for the Girl Vow Task Force for the Missing and Murdered. As one of the newest executive board members of Cycling for Change, Laura brings valuable insight on how to better serve our communities who are battling human trafficking. Laura, thank you for joining us.
So we will actually start, jump right in. And our first question is to both of our panelists. Sue, I'll start with you. And we kind of just want to get to know a little bit more about your organization. So what is the primary focus of your organization's work in combating human trafficking?
We are an all-volunteer, not-for-profit organization. And primarily what we do is raise awareness about human trafficking, which in essence, part of that is prevention as well, to try and educate people, so especially young people, so that they don't get involved in this in the first place.
Thanks, Sue. Laura?
What we do at ECLI Vibes is an array of services, from legal services to court advocacy to direct services, as well as giving individuals housing. I could sit here and list off the services that we give, but you could always go to our website at eclivibes.org to learn more.
Thanks, Laura.
Sue, my question for you is, how does your organization measure the impact of its work? Example, data collection, surveys, case studies.
I will be honest with you, that's not something that we have readily available because, in all honesty, we're not working directly with the survivors like Laura's group is, for example. So I would not have a way to quantify what we do. I don't know the impact of the presentation and who it might be affecting or whose life it might be changing when I make the presentation. So I don't really have the ability to collect that data.
Thank you. Laura?
Yeah, so what we do is we actually have a researcher out of Florida who does all the research and the data collection for the Suffolk County Anti-Trafficking Initiative, which was founded by the Suffolk County Police Department and ECLI Vibes back in 2017. So ever since then, we have begun start keeping data. We have a system that we do it in, as well as there's a confirmation process for human trafficking victims that goes through New York State. So they're able to keep the data as how many people are being confirmed throughout the state. And there's a couple of other groups and different places that are doing some other data now. However, prior to like 2014-ish, there was no data on human trafficking. So doing this research and collecting data is fairly new. And so in the coming year or so, we should have like a very good look at what human trafficking is like here in New York State and on Long Island, because the data is like becoming more advanced and people are now doing it often.
Thank you.
Sue, I can understand, sorry, Denise, I can understand why perhaps it's difficult to track, especially since your focus is on prevention. So what does prevention actually look like for your organization?
Well, I think it starts with awareness, because I think the average person is not aware that human trafficking is happening, although I think more people are educated today than used to be, particularly younger people. So I think awareness is a key, and then secondarily is prevention. And a lot of that has to do with the internet, social media, and things like that, which is a place that a lot of traffickers will lure people into. So my focus of my presentation is two-pronged, really. It's awareness and it's prevention. So my goal obviously would be hopefully to prevent it from happening in the first place.
Just to follow up, are you going into classrooms and speaking to young people? Are you doing internet webinars? What exactly does awareness and prevention look like for you?
I will tell you that I've spoken to almost every type of group you can imagine: college students, high school students, retired people. I've spoken at churches, I've spoken at temples, spoken at groups like yours, etc. So I have spoken at a variety of different groups that have reached out.
Okay. What would you say are the major risks that individuals vulnerable to human trafficking. Examples: poverty, lack of education, a natural disaster.
Are you asking Laura or me?
Either or.
Okay. Pretty much all of the above, or even things like events. For example, the Super Bowl is a place where there's a significant amount of human trafficking. And I know agencies actually go there to try to alleviate that type of thing. So when a person is financially insecure, let's just say they're homeless, they're looking for a place to sleep, they're looking for food, they're looking for help, and someone offers that to them, it looks pretty good until they're lured in, and then that person starts to take advantage of them. So all kinds of vulnerability and insecurity like that is what are some of the risk factors for human trafficking. Laura, you might want to share about that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I would like to interject on that. One thing that wasn't mentioned was substance use affected individuals, which is what we primarily see here on Long Island, are individuals who are in active addiction, who are becoming prey to these traffickers. So we do want to keep that in mind. It's really anybody who's been through any type of trauma, anybody who has a broken home, somebody who's just severely depressed. We have teenagers who are depressed and they're telling all their stuff on social media. And then there's that person out there that begins to gain trust in that individual and says, oh, it could be a 50-year-old man saying, yeah, I hate my mom too. She gets on my nerves. And why don't you take a bus and come see me? And this is what we're looking at here on Long Island. So the vulnerabilities really, it's everything.
And the drug issue and human trafficking often go hand in hand. Either someone is drug addicted prior to being lured in, and the trafficker will use them for sex in order for them to get their drugs, or someone becomes addicted after they're trafficked. And gangs are very involved in this too. So it's a various different things that lure someone in. And Laura touched on something, broken homes, things like that. There was a statistic that a significant number of people who come out of this life, and it's not easy to get out, who do come out of the life, when they're interviewed, a large number of them have been in the foster care system.
So you mentioned something about the Super Bowl, and that would be a prime area, I suppose, where sex trafficking is occurring. And the name of this event is Know the Sign. So if I'm at a major event like the Super Bowl or some sort of large gathering, what are some signs that I would be looking for that human trafficking is occurring?
Well, sometimes what you're going to see, I'm not necessarily talking about the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl is an event that draws that in, but let's just say you see a child that looks poorly dressed and maybe inappropriately dressed for the season with it can be a woman too, but primarily it's an older man who's well dressed, and that person looks scared. And I'm going to say, before I say anything else, do not intervene in a dangerous situation. If you see something that looks like it's dangerous, you call the police. You don't intervene, because you could be getting harmed. The people that are traffickers are not the nicest people. But you do see things that just don't look right. In your own gut, you kind of go, I don't know, that just doesn't look like the right circumstance. I know of a flight attendant who saw an older man with a poorly dressed young girl, and she managed to find out from the girl that she needed help, and she called the authorities, and the girl was being trafficked. So it's kind of that feeling of, I don't know, this just doesn't fit together, and it just doesn't have a feeling of something, two people that really you think would be normally together.
Thank you,
Laura,
Sue.
did you want to add something to that?
Sure. I also would like to just say that that story that she's telling is not from like another country. It happened here in the United States with the flight attendant and the young person. So not far from us. But yeah, what was the question again? Come back to me, say it.
No, she had said something about the Super Bowl and sort of
Oh,
being
yeah,
able to
so
see
you're
both
gonna
sides.
see a lot of checkers and stuff. If you Google it, it's gonna say it's not real, but it is in fact real. So things you wanna look out for, and this is wherever you are, is like if you see a room and there's it could be numerous men coming in, you're staying at the hotel, right? And there's numerous different men coming out of one room, numerous different girls coming out of one room. Those are all signs that you can look out for. Also, you can notice when you see, and you're not always looking for children, right? Somebody can look just like me, right? So you can notice if you're talking, say you're working and you're a receptionist and you're at a doctor's office and this person is constantly answering for the other person, you know, somebody who's scared to answer their own questions, or they're holding back stuff, or constantly trying to get like the okay look from the other individual that it's okay for them to speak or talk or something. So those are all common signs that you could look out for. And just like Sue said, you know, if you see something, say something to the officers, say something. We have a Crime Stoppers number where you could actually text, and it goes right to the HT units work phones. So there are ways here that you can help without putting yourself in danger.
Thank you.
The National Human Trafficking Hotline that you put on the screen early is excellent. But that's more for a case where you maybe suspect something that's going on, and they'll investigate that anonymously. But if you see something immediate that looks like someone's in danger, that's when you would call the police, and you yourself should not intervene because you don't know if the trafficker has a weapon or what type of thing is happening. So you have to be really careful with that type of thing.
So I see there's a question in the chat that says, what role does race play in the trafficking dynamics? And I would tell you that the role is disproportionate, as it is always when it comes to any other race, to Caucasian individuals. It's higher levels on every other race. However, here on Long Island, who comes forward most are Caucasian individuals, or who are looking for help and stuff, or so I don't know. We have recently started keeping the data, asking people, and New York State just recently put that little tick box in when we're confirming. So like, again, there's more to come when it comes to race and different types of data. But I do know that African American women and stuff, it's at a higher level. It's just not, it's just not shared more. They're just, most, yeah.
Thanks, Laura. And we will definitely get to the audience submitted questions in about 8 minutes. My next question to both of you in this first segment is, what are the common recruitment and exploitation tactics used by traffickers? Is it false promises of employment, coercion, threats, debt to bondage? You guys mentioned like substance abuse before and after, but how do they sort of, what's the recruitment and exploitation tactics used by these human traffickers?
Well, there's different ones. A lot of it happens on the internet. That's why I highly warn young people, and even talk to their parents about them being really careful about who they're communicating with on the internet. I'll give you an example of someone that called me about 6 months ago. It was from Glen Cove. The mom required her children to give her their password for their social media accounts. And she found that her 19-year-old daughter was communicating with, I'm going to put in air quotes, woman, because we don't know if it was a woman. In Poland, we also don't know that. And is urging her to come she could stay with this person in Poland for free, and she could go to school in Germany for free. And this is a 19-year-old girl from not from a family in need. She was from a really solid family and not a young kid. And she was, fortunately, her mom called me and I talked to the kid. The kid blocked the person in the chat room and everything. But this was a kid from a solid family that could have been lured by something that looked too good to be true, as we say. So that's just one example. There are many others. And Laura might want to share. You,
Yes,
Laura,
please.
had your own experience. I don't know if you want to share that.
Yeah, so for me, I was addicted to drugs. I was in the street. I was homeless. I was cold one day, and it was just that. Somebody offered me a place to stay and some free drugs, and I was like, "Oh, that sounds great." And then next thing you know, I'm in hell, basically. Excuse my language, but there's just recently I was on Snapchat, which I rarely do, but I was like, oh, beautiful that day. And I was like, oh, let me post up on Snapchat, right? And literally, not even 5 minutes later, somebody says to me, do you want to make money? It was that quick and that easy.
Wow.
Just my face with makeup on. But I don't wear makeup often, so I was like, this is beautiful, So I put it on Snapchat, and I don't know why, but I did, and that happened to me. I was able to screenshot it and send it over to the HT unit so they can look into it. But it is that quickly when it comes to social media. There's plenty of the foster. A lot of guys prey on the group homes and the foster homes. They know these girls had no families. They feel like nobody's going to look for them. Nobody loves them. That's how they pry them in, right? Oh, I love you. I'll take care of you. The first couple of weeks, it's, a good time, great. And then boom, you owe me this, you owe me that. Or here, you're going to do this drug and you're going to sit in this room and you're going to do what I tell you. And that's what it looks like here, close to home.
So for you, Laura, thank you for sharing that with us. Wow. I am Jennifer. Can you take I just need?
Certainly. So again, yeah, Laura, thank you for touching upon that. And I want to sort of hone in on what you both mentioned, that we had mentioned that, broken homes, being depressed, but Sue's story about this 19-year-old who was just who came from a solid home. Some of these victims do come from what we would perceive as solid homes. What are some of those issues that are being exploited by human traffickers that even allow this to happen?
Well, I think, today with social media, there's so much comparison. I even at my age, I could get caught up in that.
Yeah.
Look at Facebook and feel jealous. And really, what do you see on Facebook? You generally see people looking their best and celebrating something wonderful. Well, for young people, they're already insecure and questioning, do people love me? Does somebody want me? Everybody wants to be loved. And so if you're on social media and you're having a bad day and you're saying, I'm fat, I'm ugly, nobody wants me, that's a perfect inroad for a trafficker. And then when they lure you in, I mean, people have a concept that people are being nabbed off the street. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen at all, but that's a minority. Most people are trafficked by someone they know. And so they get groomed. So they get lured in, like Laura said, they make you feel like they're your boyfriend. They love you. They are going to provide you with gifts. They're going to give you food. They're going to give you housing. And then once they have you hooked in, thinking like they love you, next thing you know, it's like, okay, you love me now, you will do whatever they want you to do. So it's complex. It's very complex. It really hones in on we all have insecurities, but I think it's particularly more difficult when you're young.
Definitely, definitely. So in regards to the human trafficking, what are the most common forms of human trafficking, especially here for us here on Long Island, or if you just happen to know anywhere else?
Well,
I can answer that,
there's
sure.
labor trafficking, but more predominantly is sex trafficking. And males get trafficked as well, but not the majority of those that are trafficked are females. And there is labor trafficking on Long Island, but it's more human sex trafficking is more predominant. Would you agree with that, Laura?
I would agree with that. There's labor trafficking, sex trafficking, debt bondage, and familiar trafficking. So debt bondage is just what it sounds like when you constantly have a debt that keeps growing with somebody, and you're doing all this stuff. That's what they're making you do, think that you'll be able to pay it off, and you never pay it off. We see this in a lot of instances with labor trafficking. The debt bondages and the labor trafficking go together. Labor trafficking could also be an individual who's selling somebody, forced to sell somebody else's drugs. That also happened to me. And then but you're giving that person all the money, right? And then you have sex trafficking, which I don't have to explain that. What we see here on Long Island with labor trafficking is a lot out on our East End in our farming communities. But recently, and this was maybe a year ago, there was a car wash in Dix Hills that was shut down because they were labor trafficking the people that were washing the cars. So that's another instance of labor trafficking here. And then familiar trafficking, I was sold when I was about 12 going on 13 by my brother, me and my sister. So that's what familiar trafficking will look like. But what we see here more is literally parents or mothers who are working, alone. They're single mothers, literally forcing their children and they're drug addicted or whatever, literally having their kids do things to help sustain the home.
Laura, thank you so much for those definitions. Really appreciate that. I think we talk about sex trafficking a lot, but there are other forms, and understanding how that can come about is really helpful. We want to take a moment now to pause and answer some of the questions in the chat. Sasha, can you go ahead and handle that? Thank you. Sasha, you're still on mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Jennifer. And thank you to our panelists for that wealth of information. Our first question is there a correlation with undocumented individuals and human trafficking? Given the new policies around immigration in this country, what do you foresee the outcome, both intended and unintended? And either one of you can take that.
There definitely can be a correlation because you're afraid if you're here illegally, and often the people that bring you here are paid off. So you're in a very vulnerable position. You're not necessarily, life as you expected it to be is not going to necessarily be what you thought. And you are in a much more vulnerable position to be trafficked, and your family could be threatened back in your country. Your life gets threatened, your children, etc. So you would be far more vulnerable. Laura, I'm going to let you handle the other question.
Do you have anything to add?
Sure. So in the summertime, I met with the mayor and the public advocate, Jelani Williams, and stuff. And at that time, it was when the migrant crisis was like at a all-time high. And one of the things that we were seeing is that individuals, like Sue said, with no homes, they were being trafficked by people here who did have homes. But it's not just. One thing I want to mention too that I didn't mention with labor trafficking was domestic servitude. And that's where an individual comes in the home, stays in the home, cooks, cleans, does all this stuff for this person or family. And it becomes a situation where they're never allowed to leave. And they're doing everything for these people. And you're living there, you're working there, you're not being paid because you're living off of your room and board. That's one thing that's quite prevalent as well in our hospitality industries too, where it comes to, our housekeepers and stuff, or they're getting paid very little bit amount of money for the work that they're doing. So we do see also the correlation between is also labor trafficking, right? So you have these individuals who are standing on the corners looking for jobs, and these people are coming around like, I'll give you $6 an hour to do all this work for me. So yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much for that. Our next question, how can we improve the identification of potential trafficking victims?
If
Laura,
we
I'm
knew the
gonna let you
answer to
handle
that,
that
then
one.
everybody would be saved.
That's a tough one.
Right.
Laura, do you have any feedback on that? Because
I'm
that's a
sorry.
challenge for me.
Improving the identification is just keep educating our communities, having people say that this is happening to them, creating safe spaces for individuals to be able to do that. Because sometimes you cannot just look at a person and be able to say they're a victim, and keep learning the red flags and things that you should watch out for. Is that what the question was, right?
I want to ask Ms. McLeod if we're tackling the question maybe from the perspective that she intended. You can come off mic, or I'm sorry, come off mute if you wish. I'm not getting a response. So I'll move on to the other question. If anything, we'll circle.
1 second, can I just add to that question about identifying another way to identify somebody? And what we were finding here in Central Suffolk, individuals going to bars. There's a guy constantly behind them. They're even slipping stuff in drinks out here. So if you see somebody that's leaving, that's not very, coherent, and it looks like something's off, that's another thing that you can look out for, even at a restaurant or something. And, again, see something, don't say something to them, but say something to authorities or ask the waiter or waitress for help. Like, listen, I don't think this looks correct. But as far as, there's no way to really do that.
So maybe just looking out for someone who doesn't look like they have as much autonomy of their movement, especially in a public space, like someone's sort of keeping like a really tight leash on them, right? Or just has like eyeballs on them and it just seems a little off. Did I catch that correct, Laura? Okay. So next question. If someone is being trafficked, what is the process of getting out of the trafficking cycle?
Laura, you want to share your story? She would be more
Sure.
able to share that than me.
Sure. So I think it's very situational. So we have individuals who are maybe my immigrants, right? Maybe immigrants, and what happens there is once the officers find them, they will get them to safety. They will call a nonprofit agency and an attorney. So this is how it was anyway, to help them, and then give them services and stuff, and then eventually they will get a visa to stay here. I don't know what that's going to look like. That's all very up in the air now. And for an individual that's from here, for me, it was I had to go to jail. And while I was in jail, that's where I met ECLI Vibes. And I was able to, tell them what was happening to me and how it was happening. And they were able to get me the services that I needed to help me get out of the life, which meant not having to go back to the streets, giving me that support, helping me to get into a program, all those things that I needed for a better quality of life. Now, 5 years later, I just bought my own home and I work for ECLI Vibes, and my son works at ECLI Vibes as a youth advocate and stuff. So it's very situational. We have individuals who are testifying against their traffickers who may not be ready to fully get out of the life because they're just so torn. But once they have that clarity where that individual is finally in jail and stuff, and we start helping them learn how to live without having to provide services to somebody else just to pay their rent and stuff. It's really about, survival needs being met. If somebody has a house and food in their stomach, and maybe you help them get a GED or into some classes, that's really a way to help individuals get out of the life and sustain, their new life.
I wanted to say along with that, what Laura said was the good news is there are many more services available than there ever were before. And the problem is twofold, I think. Many human trafficking victims do not know they're being trafficked, so they're not aware, and they're often not aware of services that are available to them. So if they don't have a support system or anything behind them, they're going to go back to whatever they've been doing because they don't have any other options. So I just was at an event last night at the Bayshore School where there were many, many different agencies represented with all different kinds of services available. So that part of what's going on now with more people being made aware of human trafficking and things that can be done, I think is a good thing. I think we are moving in the right direction in that manner.
So I don't want to step on the toe of Sora St. Prue or Sora James, but Sue, you brought up something really interesting to close out our Q&A section. When you say that victims oftentimes don't know that they're being victimized or they don't know that they're being trafficked, can you just say a little bit more about that? Why wouldn't they know?
Because they sometimes think they don't deserve any better. And they form like what you would call a trauma bond with their trafficker. That's becomes the person, and sometimes a trafficker refers to them as daddy. And if they never had that, they form this bond that it's not a healthy bond. It's not something good, but it is all that they know. So sometimes they just see this as their life and they don't see that they're a victim of anything. And the approach now with the police department, there is a separate sheriff's department has a separate human trafficking unit, is so much better than it used to be. They know better how to approach people, speak to them in a way that they connect. And Laura, were you aware when you were going through this that you were a human trafficking victim? I would suspect probably not.
Okay, so when I was being held against my will, I knew that that was wrong. Did I have a name for it? I didn't. Did I know that I was labor trafficked when I was forced to sell somebody's drugs and give them all the money? I didn't know that. Did I see any way out at the time? No, because it was normal to me. It's what I knew. My dad was a pimp. My mom was a working girl. She had 10 kids with 8 different men. I've seen this my whole life, probably when my brother sold me at 13. You know what I mean? So it was really normalized for me, which my situation is not unique, but it's not what we always see. But for other individuals, like Sue said, these individuals feel like they're doing what they have to do for their relationship. That's what they're looking at it as.
Got it. Thank you so much for that information. I'll turn it now back over. If there are no more questions for this portion, I'll turn it back over to Jennifer. Sora St. Prue.
Thank you, Sasha. And I don't want to belabor this, but Laura, you also brought up a good point that you got help because you were in jail. But I'm wondering, how did you know to trust the person that you met to open, like I was a defense attorney. Sometimes it's very difficult to speak to people who've been arrested. They don't want to tell you anything. So what made you share that, hey, this is going on, I need to get out of it, especially since you said this was something that was normal to you?
So what happened is, and I can explain this, is that he who is there in there now, which is Sheriff Aaron Minkle and stuff, I would not talk to them. They knew it was happening because the person that was arrested, he was arrested with me, and so was somebody else, like, and they kept calling me down, and I did not trust them. I would not speak to them. I did not trust them. I was actually really mean. Now we work together, so we're okay. But when the outside agency came in, when ECLI came in, they had plain clothes on, and they're like, "We're here to help you," which is what I do now. And they're like, "We got your back. What can we do?" I was able to share that information with them. They made it wasn't right away. It took a few weeks of coming in and stuff, but that's when I felt comfortable and trusted enough to do so. But no, it wasn't to authorities, and no, we don't always have that trust with them. But that's why the team that we have now is very unique throughout New York State, and why we are able to actually get individuals to testify, because they look at this holistically and very trauma informed. So they have been absolutely wonderful with aiding in getting individuals to tell them what's happening. And they actually form some relationships with the girls or the guys we work with better than some of us. If we don't connect, we don't connect, right? So.
Thanks, Laura. So Jen, just to piggyback off of that, my question to both of you is, so what volunteer opportunities are available with your organizations for those of us hearing this and wanting to help?
Well, with our organization, we always need help with fundraising, which we do not keep any funds that we raise. It goes to organizations like ECLI and others like that we highly respect and admire, because they have the services and the survivor care that we can't provide. Also, letting us know other locations where we can speak, because that's just another opportunity for awareness and prevention. At times I need help with tabling events, like I have several coming up. I had one yesterday, and it helps to have a second person there. So those are some of the opportunities. And by the way, Laura, I want to do some volunteering with ECLI, just to let you know that I'm thinking about that.
How much more can you do, Sue?
I can always figure out a way to do something else. That's a blessing of being retired.
I know, right? Yeah. So at ECLI Vibes, we have a hotline number. It's 631-360-3606. You can call that number and just say, "Hey, I want to volunteer." We have a pantry that serves about 5,000 people a month out of it. Our pantry sometimes can see up to 200 people. So we always need people to come and help run the pantry, or set up sexual assault kits, or whatever that may look like. We always have things to get done, especially the holidays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter, setting Easter baskets. You can donate to us. You can send us some chocolate bunnies, whatever. Come make some baskets. We always could use an extra hand.
Thanks, Laura.
Now, I will say that when people call me, and they do on occasion, and sometimes I know it's above my pay grade, to say the least, the head person, Betty, who I highly respect, of ECLI, I have her cell phone number, and she kind of answers me anytime when I have something that I had a lady once who said, "I've been trafficked. I'm here from North Carolina. I have no clothes. I have no food. I need help." I was all set to go in my car and take her shopping. And then I called Fetty from ECLI, and she said, "That lady's already been in our clothes closet 3 times, and we've given her food and everything." So apparently she wasn't telling me the truth, but it would have been a stupid thing for me to do. But that was my first thought. And then my second thought was, I better call Fetty, because she's going to give me some direction here. So I defer to people like that I consider the experts.
And that's good that you have that person to contact, just to kind of fact check and make sure. Here it is. You had somebody who was trying to kind of, I would say, take advantage of the situation, just to see what more they could get after they had already been helped and blessed and taken care of, and possibly taken away from someone else who may also need those same services.
Well, I don't think that that's what she was meaning. I think she was meaning she was willing, gonna go spend her own money and take this person shopping. But we have all that, and then we have grants and funding for that, and we get our donations. Am I frozen or are you guys frozen?
No,
You're
we
not
can still hear
frozen.
you. You're not
Yeah,
frozen.
we're
We're here
good.
and see you, Laura.
I think that's kind of what she was saying. I'm not sure, but we would not ever turn anybody down, no matter how many times they come.
Okay.
But we will offer them other resources. Hey, do you want us to help you with resume writing? All those different things to help them be able to sustain their own living.
Well, I remember her saying she needed shoes. And I thought, well, I have a lot of shoes. And she said, she was 6'2". Now I'm 5 1. So I thought
I
there's
know
no,
who you're talking about.
there's
I know
no
exactly
way
who you're
my
talking about.
shoes are gonna fit this woman. No
She
way.
wears a
No
size like,
how.
yeah, she wears like a size 10 and a half or 11 or 11 and a half. Yeah, I know you're.
Yeah. You know who it was? Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought, no way are my shoes gonna help her out. It was winter. I thought, oh, that's terrible not to have shoes, you know?
Oh, which we didn't speak about. Speaking of her, is she had mental health issues. We see that a
Yes.
lot, quite often too. Individuals with severe mental health issues who are being trafficked and preyed upon. So I'm glad we brought this person up so that we could just make everybody aware here on this call that yes, that is a serious issue too in our mental health community.
Thanks, Laura. And we love to see, Sue, that you have such a big heart and how much you're willing to help those you believe are in need or those who are in need. Denise, you want to take on the next question?
What are the unique challenges faced by survivors of human trafficking in accessing and utilizing these services?
Not
First of
knowing
all,
about them.
I think they don't know about them. That's number one. They're completely unaware. They're devoid of any kind of support system generally. So they don't feel that there's anywhere that they can get help and that there isn't anything available. I know there's a group called New Hour, which you're probably familiar with, Laura, who works with women who have been incarcerated or coming out of prison and basically don't have anything. And I don't think these women would be even, and the woman who heads it up had been incarcerated herself at one point, and she makes those services available to them, but these women would not be aware of that if that was not brought to their attention. So there are a lot of services. It's just there doesn't seem to be a central location with the information unless somebody knows how to access it, in all honesty. And there are multiple different groups, and sometimes what they do overlap. And I don't know, Laura, sometimes they're not always willing to share with each other as far as collaborating. Am I correct? Or am I speaking out of turn?
You are no. You're correct for the elders. But as newbies coming in, we are really focused on collaborating and sitting in Zoom calls about an individual. And emails are great, but like, let's talk about this. Let's case console. What is it going to look like? The Suffolk County Anti-Trafficking Initiative is about 40 other different agencies, from law enforcement to I don't know, CIA, FBI, HSI. We all work together. We have quarterly meetings every 3 months and stuff. But yeah, like Sue was saying, if you don't know about it, I didn't know until they came into the jail, right? And the same thing like with New Hour. I'm also going into Rikers now, and I go every Saturday, and I go to 2 different houses and tell them about how there's help. Nobody was really doing this prior to the last few years. And so I think now with the more education, we will see more people being saved.
I did, New Hour got me into the Yaphank jail. I actually spoke there a few years ago.
So that advocacy going into these spaces where individuals have been trafficked or are in jail because of that, that's really important. So that that community advocacy, that policy advocacy. Laura, you mentioned that you had a conversation with the public advocate of New York City and the mayor about your organization. So how does your organization engage with policymakers and government officials to advocate for change?
So I am the lead policy advocate at UCLA Vibes also. I know I wear a lot of hats, but I have successfully lobbied for two pieces of legislation that have both been passed. That is the Task Force for Missing and Murdered Women and Girls of Color, and BIBOC, which was passed last year alongside my very good friend Dawn Rowe of Girl Vow in the Bronx. And then, the START Act, which was 2021. And this year I'm working on the Immunity Bill and the CARES Act and a few other pieces of legislation. But I'm in their faces. I'm going to Albany. I'm on the phone. I'm on Zoom calls with them. A lot of them are, know who I am now. And even on a local level, we invite them to the office for tours. They come in. We get donations from them. All different types of ways, because we need everybody. It takes an entire village, right? And like Sue said, prior to, there was no collaboration. So that's how we get in their faces and we say, you work for us.
So what exactly are those acts? Those you listed a bunch. What are we advocating for? What are the laws that you're asking to be changed?
One of them right now is the immunity bill, which will give individuals who are arrested outside of Suffolk County, because we kind of have like this, we have this understanding where we don't charge for prostitution, but one of them is so that an individual will not have that charge on their backs and forever if they're in a trafficking situation and stuff. And so that's one of the bill. That's the bill I'm working on now. There's just there's so many different ways. We have bills coming in to digitize the computer systems at the hotels to where there can't be any more little motels where a person can come in being anybody and, oh, I forgot my ID and be able to get in there. No, we want digitized systems. We want pictures taken. We want to be able to see who's coming in to sign for these rooms and stuff. That's one that's being worked on now with the Republicans here on Long Island and stuff. We have them come sitting at our tables where they know and they hear what we need, what the nonprofits need, and that they are the ones that have the voice to be able to make that change. So they will come and sit at the tables with us, and we will tell them what's going on, and then they will move from there.
Sue, want anything on your end in terms of policy changes that you can advocate
I have
for?
to admit that Laura pretty much covered it all, and that's more her field of expertise than mine.
Thanks, Sue.
Right. And you definitely answered a couple of questions here that we did have in regards to how does your organization collaborate with anti-trafficking organizations, law enforcement agencies, and community partners. You definitely just gave us how it is that you guys work together. And you did say it is a collaboration. It is the entire community. It is the entire village coming together to take care of each other and protect each other.
I don't do the same thing that Laura does, but I have had people call me on occasion, and because I have been involved with the different agencies, I can at least contact and refer to the agency that I think might be helpful. One time I had a man in West Islip call me and say he thought trafficking was happening at a massage parlor right in the middle of the town, and he was concerned because he lives there and his children are there. And he said, I called the police department and I called the legislator, and they didn't do anything, which I don't think was true, but that's what he thought. He said, so I'm calling you. And I remember thinking, you called the police, you called the legislator, what am I going to do, right? But I did call the contact from the sheriff's department, the human trafficking unit, and that person did investigate. The police were investigating it, but they can't always share that information with the average citizen. So sometimes we're not a big organization, and sometimes I wonder how people find us, but they do. And when I can't handle it myself, I defer to those that I know can.
Laura, you brought up a good point that in Suffolk County, there's sort of an arrangement that when someone's being arrested for something, it's because they're being trafficked. And so they don't eventually get convicted or anything like that. How did that, and there's something similar in New York City, and we actually now have law about that. How did you, or how were you able to create that understanding with law enforcement?
Right, so I think you're talking about like the Manhattan DAs, they have they have that law out there now and stuff in Manhattan, but so in 2016, when the sheriffs and the Suffolk County PD, they did a pilot program to kind of like see what was happening. At that time, I was in the streets. There was a lot of us out there. I mean, there'd be 20 girls at any given time around like the one area. You know what I mean? So they started to really see that. So they did a pilot program. Then they found out that everybody they took in, they were actually victims. So that's when they decided to create this task force for human trafficking. But they knew that they couldn't just arrest everybody, that wasn't going to fix it, that they really needed to help these individuals, right? So that's when they contacted ECLI at the time, who was the only organization that in our personal area that was doing specific human trafficking work. And then that's when they partnered, and then they got funding, and now we are 40 agencies or whatever strong, and doing the work that we're doing.
And there's community groups in that as well, as part of
Faith-based
that.
organizations also,
Yeah.
or churches.
Laura, I hear you mentioning a lot about Suffolk. Do you know if this was happening in Nassau, do you have your point of contact over here in Nassau and the different organizations? Have you also visited the jail? Because I know you said you go to Rikers, the jail that is in Nassau County there as well.
Okay, so I have not, only when I was in handcuffs, but that is on my list of places to go, and be able to leave. But Nassau is tricky, and they have been tricky, and our teams have reached out and tried to work with them and stuff. They're getting better. I know that there is the human trafficking court over there now and stuff, which is they brought one of my members of my board in to come and speak and all this stuff. So we're getting there. But the unique thing about our task force is that FBI is on our task force. So we don't have any jurisdiction. So that works out really good, right? So so we're able to help anybody in the tri-state area. So that's wonderful.
That's awesome.
Yes.
You know, when we were at an event, Laura and I and the Sheriff's Department on Tuesday at St. Joseph's University, and I asked the Sheriff's Department, is there anything similar in Nassau County? And they said they're severely understaffed, and at this moment, they don't have anything that replicates what's going on in Suffolk County.
Wow.
Am I correct, Laura? That's what they had shared.
Wow.
So we want to, we've answered all of our questions very well. So we want to go now back to the Q&A, answer some of the questions that were in the chat. So Sasha, turn it over to you.
Thanks, Jennifer. So a lot of the questions that were in the chat, the panelists sort of answered already, but I'll just quickly glance over them so as to honor our audience. One of them from Sharon was, have there been support groups created for survivors of human trafficking? And I feel like Sue would tell me to deflect to you, Laura, so I'm not
going to. She's going to know that better than me.
I'm coming to you, Laura.
We do not have a support group per se at ECLI Vibes. This is something that has been in my mind to do. We began to do it last year, and we were finding difficulties because you remember you have these girls or guys in the same areas doing the same type of stuff. So it's hard sometimes to bring everybody into the same space if they're just beginning to heal, or, you know, what we know each other. I come across people all the time that I was working with out there and that I know and stuff. So it's very difficult to create that safe space for individuals. People might not want to share because this other person is in there and stuff, but there are areas that do it, and you can Google and join on Zoom and stuff, but there are support groups out there. And if you don't feel safe doing it in your area, then I would suggest to find some. And I go to candidates groups, like I do. So like there are support groups out there though, yes.
Thank you so much for that information. One of the other questions was, how can individuals increase awareness of organizations like yours and the services available? And I think we kind of touched on that, right? Looking for opportunities to volunteer with you, getting in touch with your organizations via your websites or your hotlines, just kind of coming out to table, right? So you said there are volunteer opportunities for us to table with you, just kind of get the word out. Do you want to speak a little bit more about any of those things?
I think we pretty much covered it. I mean, there is an awful lot on the internet, and there are a lot of good organizations. The organization that I mentioned that we started with, Love 146, which is in Connecticut, has a wonderful program called Not a Number. And it's a curriculum that they go into the high schools with multiple sessions to educate the young people and hopefully prevent them from getting involved in this. And it's a nationwide type thing that they do. At one point when they started, it was mostly the work they did was overseas, but then they realized it was a big problem locally, and they're doing a lot domestically now. So, and they have an awesome website with a lot of great materials. I'm sure ECLI does as well, but there's a lot that you can garner from the internet, and a lot of opportunities.
Thank you, Sue. Laura, anything there?
I mean, you know, stay aware, share the information with somebody else. You know, hey, like, hey, this is happening. I learned this tonight. Or, you know, if you, hey, take this hotline number in case you feel like this might be happening to somebody. Just that's it. Speaking about it, it was something that was not spoken about for so long that it just needs to be spoken about.
Right. Thank you so much. And again, I think a couple questions ago, Sue said, I don't know how people find me. The very way I found you, Sue, Google, right? And we got into conversation, and one of the first things that came up was you talked about the strain, right? Just not having enough human capital to kind of like pour into the organization, people who are willing to put in that sweat equity and come out and do this work with you. And I know that our little social action committee is only about 5 members strong, but we're here. And I personally can't promise my members hours, but definitely, especially as an organization like Sigma Gamma Rho Incorporated, where service is such a huge pillar and such a huge part of what we do, I will definitely be in touch, right, to see how I can kind of push those service hours. So you have invested time in me, but I also issue that to the audience, right? Look for opportunities to volunteer with these organizations, and see how you can help them to push their mission and their vision forward. Next question.
I think one of the hard things about this topic is it's very dark. And I find if I'm out with people in casual conversation, there are always those people that ask more questions. And then there are always those people that you're sitting at lunch that say, can you pass the salt? Because it's a very dark topic. And sometimes I know myself, when I first learned about it, it almost felt like, what could I possibly do? And it felt so big. But each person can do something. And even if you only touch one person, you make a difference. So sometimes I don't know. I don't know what impact I make when I speak. I have no idea, but my hope would be that I've either touched somebody's heart who might be thinking about getting into it, or maybe even someone that's been there and now knows a place that they can go for help. So You just don't know that.
Got it. Thank you so much for that information, Sue. And our last question, what are the major difference between LEOT and ECLI?
Well, ECLI is a professional organization with social workers, et cetera, that has the tools to work with the survivors. Long Island Against Trafficking is more a volunteer organization looking to raise awareness about human trafficking and partner with organizations like ECLI. So I don't think there's another organization like us on Long Island. I'm pretty sure there isn't. And I think there's a place for both. But what we do is very, very different, and we don't offer services to survivors like ECLI does. We don't have the people to do that. We don't have that available to us. And it wasn't our mission anyway in the beginning, to be honest with you. So ECLI provides all those sources, those resources that we can't provide.
Thank you so much for that information. If there are no other questions at this time, if you do have a question, please feel free to come off mute and ask that question. If you do not have any other questions, then I'll turn it back over to Sora St. Preux.
Thank you, Sasha. Again, I just want to thank our panelists for sharing their vision, what they do to bring awareness to and address human trafficking. So sorry, there was one last question in the chat. How does LIAT promote awareness? I know you kind of spoke on that earlier when we first started to, but if you could just briefly just go back over how it is that you guys bring about awareness.
Most of the time it's presentations and people reach out to me. I will tell you that COVID really put the kibosh on a lot of that, because a lot of that stopped happening around COVID. And honestly, I was looking back over all the places I've spoken, and it occurred to me the other day that I really do need to reach out to them again, because if I spoke at a high school, it's going to be different students, or a college, going to be different students as well. So I really think I need to set a goal of starting to reach back out to some of those groups that I spoke at in the past. But in my case, I took what I did in my job, which was a lot of public speaking, and I applied it to this. So, and I've been speaking since 2007 while I was working, but then since I've retired, I have more free time to do it. So I kind of say to people, I don't care how many people are there or where I'm going, you just call me and I'll show up.
Thanks, Sue. Thanks for answering that question. COVID did really put a halt on a lot of these types of presentations and awareness, and I think we're sort of kind of getting back to that in-person touch that's so necessary for some of these conversations. And so hopefully you'll get that audience back. So before we end, again, I want to thank our panelists, Sue, Laura. If there was just like one thing that you wanted to leave this audience with, what would that be? We'll start with Laura.
I have two things. One thing is that, my tagline is kind of like, I advise to more survive, just know that you're not alone, and there is hope when you feel so hopeless, and say something, speak about it. We can't be silent anymore.
Thanks, Laura. Sue?
I was going to say, if you see something, say something, which is what they say in the airport. And I also think people need to get insight so they can develop compassion for those that have been trafficked, because I think there might be some judgment involved. There may be a lot of things that go on when people look at this. I know myself, when I was young, I would have looked at this very differently than when I got older. And now I just look at it as, I have a heart for it and for those victims and I especially applaud people like Laura, who has a real overcomer, who has turned her life around and doing so much to help others. I mean, I'm really impressed. So I applaud you.
Thanks.
But you can't turn your back on it. You see it. You know that expression, once you know, you cannot unknow.
Absolutely, and that's a great way to sort of end and cap off this panel discussion. Again, I think that's the third time I'm saying it. Thank you to our panelists. This is indeed a very dark and serious topic, and I'm happy that you all were able to share your insight and knowledge into this topic. I know we have a resource slide that's getting ready to load for those of you who are here, and once that ends, I'm gonna on behalf of myself and Sora Denise and the Social Action Committee, thank you for joining us. And I believe I just want to make sure I have our Madam Basilis, our president of the chapter, say a few words in closing.
Yes, thank you, Sora St. Prue. Thank you, Sora James, and thank you, Sue and Laura, so much for sharing your time with us. Laura, thank you for sharing your story. I can't tell you, I'm getting messages on the side of just how impactful the words that you shared this evening were, how important it was to hear your story and just see and hear all the work that you're doing to help empower and provide resources for those who might be victimized currently. Sue, thank you so much for spreading awareness across the island. And just, it was great hearing your story about how you really took action after hearing, the horrific things that were happening right here in our backyard. So it's really a testament to the work that we all can do to really bring awareness to make sure that we are creating safer spaces for women and children and victims here on Long Island. So I really do want to thank everyone who came out this evening. If you're watching the recording, please share it. Again, we heard about how important it is to spread awareness and to really just make sure that people understand what resources are available. If you know someone who's been impacted, please share ECLI's contact information, ECLI Vibes. You can find them online. We'll make sure to leave that information below the recording of this video. And again, the link for this video is shareable. Please share it with someone you know. You never know how one video can impact someone else and maybe even just provide them with information they didn't know before. As Laura shared earlier, she didn't even realize she was being trafficked, quote unquote. So it's really important that we are spreading awareness so that we can get people connected with the resources that can be very life-saving or impactful for them. So at this time, we will end. I do want to just highlight a few other initiatives that we do have going on in the Beta Psi Sigma chapter. So this Sunday at 2 p.m. at the Baldwin Public Library, we will have our Rosebud Roundup. That is an opportunity for young girls between the age of 8 and 11 to join our affiliate group where we provide mentorship as well as community service opportunities for young girls. If you know a parent, we are inviting them to come out. They can also bring their daughters with them to this event at Baldwin Library, 2 p.m. on Sunday. And then we also have our biennial Uplift Awards. That is a fundraising luncheon. It is going to be April 26th at the Crest Hollow Country Club. You can find more information about that event on our social media. So again, I would like to thank everyone for attending this evening. I would like to again thank our moderators, Sora St. Prue, Sora Denise James, as well as our committee chair, Sasha Bent, who has worked tirelessly on this initiative, especially for Human Trafficking Awareness Month. This was her brainchild, so I really do want to thank her. And Sasha, do you want to say a few words before we close out?
Thank you, madam. I just want to say thank you to everyone. I want to just start off with Sora St. Prue. I am a little Neo in this big pond of Sigma Gamma Rho fish. And Sora St. Prue took me under her wings and allowed me to breathe life into the Social Action Committee. And I just want to thank you for your mentorship and guidance. I want to thank the Soras who heard me screaming from the top of the mountain saying I have no committee members and decided to join me on this amazing initiative. And I just want to thank everyone for their support, especially while I'm indisposed. These programs could not have been successful without the tremendous work of our Pistolius, and my line sister, Erica Addy, Sora James. I thank you so much. And Madam Basilis, your guidance for the overall programming. So thank you. And to all of our audience members, thank you so much. To our panelists, thank you for your unwavering support. Thank you and have a good night.
Yeah, thank you so much. We really do appreciate you. And then until next time, again, follow us on social media for more of our programming, and also please share this video as a resource to others. Take care.
Thank you all. Good night. See you later, Sue.
Bye. Be safe.
Take care,
Thank you
Laura.
so much, everyone.
Laura, I'll contact you.
Okay, great.
Today, if you saw somebody chained to a post, you would do something about it. But in the days of the transatlantic slave trade, it was a normal sight to see. It isn't as clear today of what modern slavery looks like, but by knowing the signs of human trafficking, you can help protect yourself and you can help protect others. Traffickers would often brand their victims with tattoos, using words such as daddy or cash. Trafficking victims may show sudden changes of dress and behavior. They may suddenly have possessions that they usually can't afford. They may have unusually long work hours. Victims may have new relationships with boyfriends or girlfriends that are noticeably older, and I'm not talking about a few years. Difficulty with making eye contact, especially with men. Victims may have untreated medical problems, such as cuts, bruises, burns, broken bones. They may miss school frequently, make frequent trips. Victims may be unable to speak independently. Other people may insist on answering questions for them, or even translating for them. Victims may even be frightened of authorities, seeing them as the bad guys. To request help or report possible human trafficking incidents, please call the National Human Trafficking Hotline, 1-888-3737-888, or text info or help at BeFree 233-733.